On this episode of You Can Feel It All Over, I sit down with bassist Bradley Ryan Morse to discuss a range of topics from his new life as a dad, the current state of the music industry, and some of Bradley's ideas around playing bass. Bradley plays his arrangement of Tim O'Brien's High Road, and to close the show, Bradley and I play a duet of Thelonious Monk's classic, Blue Monk. Stay tuned for this and much, much more. All right, welcome to another episode of You Can Feel It All Over. This is my guest and friend, Mr. Bradley Morse.
Howdy.
Famed local bass player. Plays in projects such as The Lonesome Days,
Yeah.
Mason Town, and the Gasoline Lollipops.
Yeah.
How you doing, sir? Cheers. Thanks for coming
good.
over.
Thanks for having me, Keith. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Fellow bass player extraordinaire.
Mighty fine espresso.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Espresso is brought to you by Ozo Coffee.
Yeah.
Shout out to Justin Hartman.
Definitely.
So what's new? What's something interesting?
Well, I had a baby
7
7 weeks ago. That's pretty new.
Yeah. So now you have something to play for?
That was something to play for. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, little baby Aoife.
Yeah?
Like Aoife, just like Aoife O'Donovan for all you folk people out there. Yeah.
That's cool. So what's that? What kind of transition has that been like going from?
Not as much practice time, honestly. Yeah, it's been pretty interesting. Like I've been trying to sneak practice in here and there, but it's gotten better though. The first month is always the most difficult. Yeah, because like she's not on any schedule, but she's starting to get on a sleep schedule now. So.
Who does diaper duty in the middle of the night?
We switch.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of times I'll do diaper duty just because she's feeding and stuff. So, yeah,
She feeds, you change?
I change. Yeah, that's kind of how it works. Yeah.
That's cool.
But anyway, it's a team effort. We're glad there's two of us. It's makes it a lot easier.
That's cool. So has that changed your, I know I watch a lot of mixed martial arts stuff and I watch a lot of interviews, and it's always interesting to me when a lot of the fighters have kids. They're always like, man, now I have something to fight for. Like, it changes everything. So is it anything like that come up for you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, like when all of a sudden it's like my priorities have changed.
Yeah.
Like now all of a sudden I'm like, I just want to give her as much as possible, everything I can. And I just want to like sit on the couch now and chill with her. And just be like, oh my gosh, she's smiling. That's like the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
So it's like that, definitely life changes like that whenever you have a kid. And also just like, you always hear everyone talk about it. You never know until it actually happens to you. But as soon as they come out, it's just like, oh, whoa, you just know instantly. Like first time you see your little hair and everything, you're just like, this is the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah. You're like, it's almost like your greatest work of art.
Yeah. But it's like, I don't know. It's like, I'm just like so happy that she exists, and I just want to I want her to be a good human. I want her to love herself as well. It's one thing that we all go through life and just try to end up loving ourselves. That's like one of the biggest, that's the root of almost all problems, is that we don't love ourselves. Not in like a pompous sort of way or something like that, or like a self-important way, but like in a kind of, just, I'm okay. Like, I'm doing okay in the world, that type of thing.
That's cool.
So I hope that for her, and I hope that she's good to others and things like that. So I just want that for her. So, yeah.
That's cool. Well, I mean, she's a reflection of you guys. I don't know your wife that well. But I know you really well, and I think that you're a great guy.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So she's got a good head start.
Well, we hope, she's still her own person, so.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that stuff is really interesting too. The world of emotions and like, how it's easy. At least for me, if I don't keep myself in check, it's easy to look at other people and not like bad jealousy, but looking at what other people have, and then like instead of self-reflecting, being like, wow, I've got everything I need. I've got the espresso machine.
Yeah.
We're drinking El Dorado spring water.
There you go.
Organic coffee beans.
Oh my gosh, seriously, yeah.
Like, it's like, why not just be grateful for the small things, and not worry that I can do that.
It's all about living in a state of gratitude, and that's like that's like the end of it. Honestly, that's what almost like all religions, they have a huge set of that type of thing. It's like if you can live in gratitude, then you'll live a good life. If you can be okay with what you have and be okay with your life. And like actually, I was listening to an Ethan Yojevitz interview on Talkbase,
cool.
with Jason. Contrabass Conversations.
Yeah, I think I listened to the same one.
Yeah, it's the one with I think I'm not sure if he's done more than one, but the one I listened to, like he had this mantra that he shared, and it was just that if I can remember it correctly, it's like this moment is enough, and I was like, oh, that is genius. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it just reminds yourself that it's like no matter what's going on, no matter what you're trying to achieve, this moment is enough. It's like you don't need any more, you don't need any less. It's like this is it.
This is
it's
it.
Like, this is it. It's fine. And it also, it's like it doesn't. I don't think that deters you from aspiring for things and aspiring for goals, and going for things like that. But it also just it reminds yourself that it's like things are okay, especially in this world of like Facebook and Instagram and all these social media things where it's like the whole point is to make it look like you're having a really good time when actually you're miserable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like tends to be the status quo of today. But if you could just get out of that and just be like, I'm okay. Like everything is okay. Even if you're in like a complete just, wallow of even if like life is even if life is like not going well, you can just still center yourself and be like it could be worse. It can always be worse. You could not be living. That is worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's true. Yeah, I always think about I read a lot of I've been reading a lot of these financial books lately. And one thing that's kind of related to that really sticks with me is my mantra now is like want what you have.
Yeah.
You're not what I think part of it's like always this weird like there's this ingrained consumeristic person that lives inside all of us because it's like that's what we see, that's where you've been trained.
Yeah.
And I talk to shout out to my brother Johnny. I talk to my brother a lot where we talk about like, the society isn't really designed for you to save money. It's designed for you to go out and spend. So it's like so a lot of times lately more and more my thing is like want what you have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it really makes a difference. Like even everything from, like I make all these meals on Sunday, and then I have all these meals, and sometimes I'm driving home and I'm like, man, I just want to stop and get some food.
Yeah.
Eat out and not do anything. But I'm like, why don't you have? You got all this good stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Home,
yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
You can just apply it and applying it to music. That's the one thing that as musicians, it's like musicians always have like a peculiar, certain issues, certain things that we deal with. One of those things, is like you can superimpose it on music where it's like we're always looking into our idols, like Ethan Yojevitz. You can say we use him as an example. We're like, man, that guy is like he's worked so hard and practiced so hard, and he's so far ahead of like where my playing is or where a lot of people's playing are. And I'm just always like, oh, I want that, but I'm like, it's getting to know and be okay with your own playing and be the way that it's like I play the way that I play, and as long as I can express music, I mean, yes, it doesn't mean I'm going to stop practicing. I still want to go and do that, but doing that just in a way where it's like I'm happy to go and get better, as opposed to I've got to get better, otherwise I'm not a good musician. It's like no, it's like you're a good musician. It's just that learning to express what you need to express as a musician, with whatever means you have, and then the more tools you have, then the more articulate you can be. It's like having a stronger vocab,
Yeah.
So that's why it's like we are always just like, oh, they're so great, they're so great, they're so great. And it's cool to go and appreciate someone for their art, I think. But there's also a fine line. Sometimes we tend to put people up on pedestals.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like we were kind of talking about that this morning, where it's like, oh, that's untouchable, that one thing.
It's really not.
It's really not. Yeah, it's just, and also just being okay with yourself, and then just being okay with yourself and the pursuit, and being in the pursuit.
Yeah.
Because the people that are on top, honestly, they're still trying to get better.
They're still working.
It doesn't. There's no stopping, and that's why we're music and life kind of parallel perfectly. Where it's like there's no succeeding, in it. It's like you can do certain things, but it's not like, well, I made this certain amount of money. I mean, yes, money does make life easier sometimes, but it's like it doesn't mean that all of a sudden all your problems are gone. Yeah. There's new problems. Yeah. And so it's learning to deal with your problems and then centering yourself and moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I think about that a lot with I always like to talk with different people about this, like the concept of a genius. So in my mind, it's like, well, yeah, there's definitely people that have a leg up in some sort of thing. I like to look at like the natural intelligences sort of concept, and it's like the problem I have with the term genius is that it takes away from the hard work that a person like
Agreed.
The Beatles are a great example. You know, everyone's
Agreed.
like they're geniuses. That's unattainable. And granted, yeah, they had a great, something brought them all together.
Yeah.
Great vibe, but like those guys slayed it and worked hard and put tons of hours.
Yeah.
There's like you read about like the equivalent to what a rave is. They're playing these all night parties.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like working on other people's material, and they stuck with each other long enough, and then it started flipping into like what they could put together.
Exactly.
You know, and art is so interesting with music, and then to me at least, even like something like this, like Van Gogh, it's like this is just a moment in time.
Exactly.
You know, along this guy's journey where, he puts stuff together, and we get that a lot, and it's always interesting to me with people with the term genius, And again, not to deny that some people definitely have a leg up.
Well, there's a leg up,
work.
but I mean, it's the same thing with like people that are you're talking about natural ability, right? Some people are born with perfect pitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't. It's like you can identify the notes, right? Just from it's like okay, that's an E, that's an F, but you don't know that that's an E, you don't know that's an F, unless you work at it. And some people with perfect pitch don't have as good a relative pitch.
Well, I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, and relative pitch is something that you have to work on.
Yeah.
Hearing like minor sixth, like major third, and just being able to hear a melody and reproduce it instantaneously. Some people with perfect pitch, they can kind of hear notes, and they hear them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they can play back exactly what it is. And then also, you're also talking about memory.
Mm-hmm.
Can they remember the melody that they just heard? Yeah, they identify that's an E and then an A and then a G and then something else, But can they remember it instantaneously? So these are all concepts that you need to work on and build.
Yeah.
So just because you have perfect pitch, I mean, yes, you have a little bit of a leg up, but you still have to work. And sometimes people with perfect pitch, it's kind of a curse because certain things are easier than others. So you don't have to work as hard.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's like the concept of genius is like, I completely agree. Like, I mean, I'll use him as an example just because we've been talking about him like 3 different times. But Ethan Yojevitz or Paul Cohart too, any of these bass players, right? Or Edgar Meyer, it's like they have spent like thousands and thousands of hours. Like I remember talking to an old friend of Ethan's, and she knew him back when he lived in Olympia. And she was like, when he started getting into fiddle tunes, he would literally practice for, like, no exaggeration, like 7 hours a day.
Yeah, I talked to him once. We were doing a Skype lesson, and I was like, man, my shoulder, and this and that. And he's like, that reminds me when I was in Ithaca. He's like, I'd play so much, I'd have to soak my arm in, like, the sink full of ice to try to bring the inflammation down.
Seriously. He had this drive, and that's the thing. It's that drive to go and do something and fail and fail and fail and fail and fail, but keep doing it. That honestly, I feel like that's infinitely more valuable than having perfect pitch. Having just a natural, persistence, and it's having a persistence out of a place of a love for something. Because if you can cultivate a love for something, then that's like a well that never runs dry. You can always just go back to it, and you're always just like, oh yeah, I want to keep doing this. I want to keep doing this. So that's the beauty of it, is that honestly, like, that's what I love about music, is that I'm very, very fortunate that I can do this for a living, because it's like I'm never gonna get tired of it. There are moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I've played for 12 hours today, I don't want to play anymore, or my hands are so sore, I need to take a break. But I wake up the next morning and I'm like, let's do it. Or like you were playing jazz before this, I would like heard some Ray Brown stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go and sit down and transcribe something.
Dude, that's what happens. Like when I drive to work, having a day job is always interesting, because I hear like I've been listening to a lot of Stevie Wonder, and I was listening to Isn't She Lovely, and like, man, what is like, I could hear like the 16251, but then the other part I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
But it was like, so luckily I was able to go in. I got in early enough so I can go to the music room and work it out on the piano. But there's some days like it's like the working memory. I hear it, I'm like, I'm gonna work on that when I get home. I have to go through a whole day of like just craziness, drive home, and then come back and be like, it's like 7:30 at night. I'm like, this is the moment. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Hopefully I remember it and I can bring it back up.
hopefully you're not too exhausted, also to just do it sometimes. Never too exhausted.
Never too exhausted for music.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah, going back to Stevie Wonder, I always think a lot about music. Like, for me at least in my world, I'm always like trying to work on this dial of like, here's like rhythm, here's like melody, here's like understanding harmonic structures, making things feel good,
Yeah.
And then I listen to Stevie Wonder, I'm like, that dude had it all, man. Like,
yeah.
Yeah,
he did.
He was able to play all the instruments.
Still has it all.
Still
has it all.
God,
yeah.
I listen to some of that stuff, and it is just amazing.
Dude, live too. Like, I just saw him last summer because he came through town, right?
Yeah.
And like,
good.
I mean, yeah, man, his piano playing is still like top notch. I mean, and most of his vocal work is still great. There's like a couple of the higher lines that his backup singers will sing now. And so he won't go for that as much, because I mean the guy's like, I think in his 70s, maybe yeah. So I mean he's getting up there, but I mean I've seen a couple other older luminaries and he's doing better than they were, and he's just like, yeah, man. I mean talk about, and then like tune after tune after tune after tune. I'm just like, oh yeah, that one. Oh yeah, there's that too. Oh yeah.
Well, that's the other part too.
Oh my gosh, he's so prolific. Yeah.
Like, did he write all those songs too?
Yeah, he did.
You know what I mean?
He wrote all those songs. He performed
part.
all those songs. He's just like, he's definitely a gift. And like at a super young age on the chromatic harmonica, it was like young little Stevie Wonder. He was like little Michael Jackson, right?
Yeah.
Before Michael Jackson, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah.
I found actually a great album. There's I think it's I Was Made to Love Her is the name of the song.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back and listened to the actual album, and I found out it has James Jamerson.
Yeah.
He's playing on the whole.
Yep, dude.
The whole entire album. So I'm like, oh, this is great. And what's really cool too is in '67, which is all those Motown recordings, and the '60s to me are really cool because it just pushes the envelope right before everything started getting overproduced, so to say. There's still some
completely agree.
rawness to it,
Yeah.
But that brings up another bass god. What are your thoughts on the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. James Jamerson?
James Jamerson, I mean, him among several others. But yeah, James Jamerson, man, like his feel, I mean, his time feel, that's like, I mean, yes, his note choice and everything is brilliant as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's like how he plays, how he sits within the drums and everything else going on.
Yeah.
That's the real magic of his playing. And like Darling Dear or something like that. That's like always, that's held up as one of his best bass lines. And honestly, it's like it steals the show. It's like the song's like good, but it's like, I mean, his bass line just steals, it's like essentially becomes another melody. And I don't know, like just the way that he plays, and also like I've got to say this too, that also that style of music allots him to play the way he does. Yeah. Because like since I've been playing like bluegrass or like with the gas pops, more like a country bass feel, like it's been like a real challenge to play a bass line that's still very much in that particular groove, but also like be creative with it. So I've had to figure out other devices, because he's able to, like in the Motown stuff and in the R&B idiom, there's like a very wide beat. Yeah. And he can fill that beat, and he can move from like the front end of the beat to the back, and there's a lot of freedom in the way that he can express it, and he's definitely a master at that. Like that, I could not do that. I could not do as nearly as well as James, and there's a reason why he's the king.
He's the king, and for me, that he was the first person when I started playing bass that I was listening to what's the Stevie Wonder tune? For Once in My Life. And I remember that it was the first time I was listening to the bass a lot, and then I was like, let me listen to like the bass and the drums playing together. Yeah. And it was the first time where like it clicked in my head. I'm like that's the pocket. Yeah. And how he almost like like the takeaway for me is like, man, he always nails the one. Yeah. But he dances around. It's almost like they're they're dancing around each other a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
still
yeah.
like right in there.
Oh yeah.
And it always impressed me. He does these runs, but then it comes back to the one. And it's like boom. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I'm like,
It's just right there. Always there. Yeah. One is, and that's the one thing. It's like
the one.
Yeah, the one. It's like always knowing where that is, especially in that R&B or even funk type idioms.
Yeah.
Like knowing where one is so important. And then like, you know, kind of going away from it, not having like straight eighths. I mean, you're definitely, it's like swung eighths, but it's not just like basic swung stuff. You know, he's creating like a melodic line with his rhythmic phrasing is what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it. But also like that whole idiom, like I mean, there's some other really, like Bob Babbitt was the other bass player in Motown.
Was he one of the Funk Brothers? Is that?
I think Jameson was one of the Funk Brothers, I believe. I think. God, I should know that. But yeah, Bob Babbitt also did a lot of other Motown stuff, and Bob Babbitt's bass playing is still really great. And then honestly, there's the American studio, which I believe was down in Memphis. And they did things like Son of a Preacher Man, like Dusty Springfield.
Oh yeah, like they did
yeah.
Aretha's early recordings.
It's yeah, some of those as well, and that's Tommy Cogbill, and Tommy Cogbill is like
he played on Rocksteady, I think.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, and then there's like there's so many great bass players, and there's like Chuck Rainey, you know, who like played with a lot of like, you know, he played with Aretha as well. And each of them has their own, and that's the beauty of it, is that each of them has their own style.
Yeah.
Each of them has their own approach to it. I mean, Jameson, I feel like he's due all the credit that he gets, but there are a lot of other guys too that are brilliant, you know.
Well, I think a lot about, for me with all that stuff, because I'm going back and forth between like getting into the jazz stuff, trying to transcribe Ray Brown stuff, say.
Yeah.
And then playing a song, and then I'm like, well, what's the point? Is the point that I'm playing exactly what he played?
Yeah.
But more, it's, I think about, and this was Jamerson, it's like, well, what do those guys do that's really cool? Like how, like learning what they do, their vocabulary, and their like how they approach playing, and instead of like memorizing their lines and playing it, being like you know, Ray with like the triplet,
yeah, the digga-da-dums,
the drops,
as my old teacher used to say, digga-da-dums.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's like, okay, cool, like, how does he do that? Where does he place it?
Yeah.
As opposed to like, well, I'm going to figure out all his stuff because you know, inherently, how do you maintain your own sense of identity as a musician?
Yeah.
And I was reading an article or an interview with Ray Charles this morning, and when he first started, he was like Nat King Cole impersonator.
Oh yeah! Oh my gosh!
You
You listen to those old early recordings of him when he's in Seattle, and it's like, I mean, his voice and everything. He's trying to be Nat King Cole.
Yeah, and so he had said, he was like, man, I realized, I woke, and the interview was like, well, when did you go from being like this Nat King Cole impersonator to being like Ray Charles, you know?
Yeah.
He's like, man, and it's amazing. He was like in his early 70s in the interview. He's like, man, I still remember the night just tossing and turning and being like, I don't want to be known as, hey, you're that guy that sings all those Nat King Cole tunes really well.
Yeah.
So he's like, I realized it, and he's like, you know, my mama raised me to be like, you just be who you are, and you do your thing, you know? And he's like, I just realized I'm either going to make it or I'm not, but I'd rather be Ray Charles than be like the Nat King Cole guy. You know, and that's interesting. A lot of those guys back then, and I don't know if that's something we lose, and you and I were kind of touching base earlier on it. I always have this fear of like things getting sterilized, like music getting sterilized. Because back in the day, like if we, you know, you could walk in and you're like, oh, that's Ray Brown playing the bass that you're listening to.
Yeah.
But when we talked about like Ron Carter's tone, like he was going for something different.
It goes different. It's like, and it's its own thing. And Paul Chambers is his own
thing. Yeah. But I get nervous these days that like, you know, is there a risk that things are getting too clean and are not going to be as
well, it's because nowadays
it's individualized as opposed to generic sound.
It kind of depends upon which type of music you're looking at nowadays, because ever since like Napster and that, everything has been so fractionalized.
Yeah.
So now you have all these niche markets of these things, and now it's like mainstream music is like such a, I mean, yes, it still draws some like large audiences and stuff like that, like Chainsmokers or whoever the heck you want to call upon, you know, for like Justin Bieber's of the world, Taylor Swift's of the world, like the big names, right? Like, yes, they have a large audience, but it's like they're doing such, I mean, like, as far, like, such a small percent of the amount of music that's going on in the world nowadays.
Yeah.
And it's never stopped. And now with the internet, it's like you can actually find it, but it's just not being fed to you, like through, 3 stations on TV or your local FM station,
Yeah.
or it's like, or like you go to the record store and that's what you have to buy is what's in the record store. That's where your music comes from. It's like, no, now you have the internet, which is like anything you want. You just have to find it, and that takes time, and that takes like agency on someone's part to like go and find that. So that's the part nowadays, is that I feel like the music fans nowadays, they're becoming like very dedicated, and very like I mean, yeah, like if you want to look at something locally, like there've been a lot of very successful Kickstarter campaigns locally for local bluegrass bands, because that's the world that I know a bit of in the Colorado scene. And I think what the reason why that is because people aren't spending the amount of money that they have previously, but they still care about it. And especially there are a select group of people that are like super fans now. So you get like these super fans who are like really into a particular band, really into like like a whole lifestyle that a particular band represents.
The branding.
Essentially is what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so they'll spend, $100 on a Kickstarter campaign because they're not going and buying all their music now. They just pay a $10 Spotify subscription and get all of your music, and get not only all of your music, but all of whoever else they want. But I don't know. I think it's a good thing. I think it is a good thing that this has happened. I mean, yeah, things aren't what they used to be. I'm sure that there's positives and negatives. But I mean, we're in it, and there's no going back.
There's no going back, yeah.
So you might as well look at like the positive aspects of it, which is that it's like there's so much new stuff to see, and so much new music, and I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of things to discuss. It's interesting.
I was talking with my good buddies about this at a folk festival. There was someone in the tent basically saying like, you're a dirtbag if you have Spotify Apple Music. And I get it. So I have a day job.
Yeah.
So disclaimer. So my basic needs financially are met. And I get that. And I get that 100%. I'm fully aware of that. So I'm not out there,
Yeah.
The struggle for me is different, but it's not in the same sense where I'm trying to fully fund myself.
Exactly,
doing art. But the other point that my friend said was like, well, yeah, the only thing is like, you're a creative person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, be creative and figure like you're saying, it's not going away.
It's not going away. Yeah, that's here to stay. It's not like everyone's going to stop downloading music or stop.
Yeah.
At least, I mean, honestly, Spotify is. I mean, I hate to say it. It was almost like it's not a. It's. I mean, obviously there still needs to be a lot to discuss. They need to treat the artists better. They need to give the artists better.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. They need to give the artists more money. That's always going to be a debate, and it always should be a debate. The artists should be able to get more money for that because they're offering a platform, but the artists are like doing all the work. They're doing a lot of the work. But anyways, that aside, it's like Spotify's better than Napster. Because Napster, people didn't pay a cent for that stuff,
Sure.
And it's like LimeWire and all these other things. It's
all
like
legal downloads.
I mean, heck, like I did that when I was a kid. I mean, who didn't? Who didn't download stuff for free? Because it's free. I mean, of course you're gonna do that. But I mean, that's why I brought up the Kickstarter stuff. Is that people like nowadays I feel like as long as you ask people, as long as an artist you ask people like, hey, I need help, or this is what I do for a living. Would you contribute?
Yeah.
And if they'll do that, man. I mean, heck, people nowadays they start Kickstarter campaigns for like grilled cheese sandwiches and make millions of dollars or something like that.
We were talking about that. Like I think it was the ultimate tuna fish sandwich or
something like crazy stuff. Like people make like quite literal millions of dollars because it's funny, right? Like, so there's.
That does make me mad, and I wasn't trying to think bad. I know because it's like, the Kickstarter thing at first when it came around, it was I'm 41, So when I grew up kind of a blue collar town where it was like, you know, my grandparents came over from Europe and it was like, you just work, you know what I mean?
That's what you did.
You're grateful. If someone wants to do something for you, you say thank you, let them do it, but you basically work for what you have, you know? So it was like a little weird in the beginning, but now I'm like, well, I think it's actually really cool because like you can, because I always wonder that, like, how do I support people?
Yeah.
Like you know, because I definitely grew up in the CD boom where it was like you went out.
Yeah, you bought
tons of CDs.
You patroned them and you got their CD.
Yeah, like that was huge. You know, like going to the record shop was always super cool.
Yeah.
But then or going to live shows, you know, you walk out with it, you know, you get the CD and you're like,
exactly.
Cool. But now I'm always like, well, how do I still support people? So merch, I think, is good. So I always try to buy like.
I mean,
merch.
The joke is still that it's like bands and artists are glorified T-shirt salesmen.
I know.
That's essentially what they are. Yeah, because I mean that's like it's still today. Like I know some big name acts in Colorado where like most of their, like most of their income is T-shirt sales and stuff. That's where they make a lot of their stuff because whatever they get paid for from the venue, like they can ask a good price, but a lot of times that's covering the tour bus, that's covering, you know, all the travel, that's covering that's paying for the band and stuff. But like T-shirt sales and like sweater sales, and there's like people have like apparently like screen printing posters is like a huge thing. People hang up.
Wow.
They get like, you know, the Grateful Dead, right? Like people would get like specific shows like screen printed and then they hang it up. They get it framed and that looks good in people's houses. Like that's
part of the creative piece. I mean, you know, it does make me mad to think that like people can't go out. You know, you can't like you're not like that. There's these streaming platforms on one hand, and they're really like doing an injustice to you work out. Your music's on there, and you're out there, but you're still out there grinding every day, which is always a part. It doesn't matter what field you work in, you still have to grind and you still have to hustle.
You always have to hustle.
It makes me mad that like there's no well, you should be able to do that. You shouldn't have to So there's that, but then there's the other part where it's like, well, the brand. Then there's like the branding piece and all that stuff. So how do you get hip? How do you use like the creative sort of forces to create that stuff and to increase income and
I mean that's where finding
you know?
Someone that you know. It's like it's being as creative in your marketing and viewing marketing as a creative outlook almost, and not just like, oh, I'm trying to steal all this money from these people. It's like, no, you got to get out of that mindset because
just have fun with it.
Because people want to help you. People, it's like, and that's another thing where I'm, you know, as musicians too, I definitely suffer from this where I'm always just like, oh, no one wants to hear what I'm doing. You know, I'm just like, there's so many people that are better. Why does anyone want to hear what I'm doing? Like, oh, who am I, you know, to do this? But then people are like, no, I actually want to hear what you're doing. I want to hear what you're playing. I want to hear what you're doing. So I still fight with that. But
the money thing though, you know, you know, the level where I'm at, I always call myself like the bottom feeder guy. I'm like out there slinging it like the breweries and all that.
That's still good.
I always think like the money thing is weird because like sometimes people like the tip thing. I'm always like, people want to give you money. Like if you and I don't mean this like I mean this in a good way. Yeah. Saying like if people are drinking and you're playing. And you're making people feel good, and you're just like, maybe all you're doing is you're creating atmosphere, and no one's really like wholeheartedly listening to you because they're not there to see you. Yeah. It's more like they're at a brewery. Wow, this is cool. There's a live music. These guys don't suck. This is cool. Yeah. But how do you make it fun? You know, so I always try to get people to be like, we should create like a funk groove. And we used to do this in Riverbend, you know. We'd create like a funk groove, and I would like. Sometimes it would flow real nicely, sometimes it wouldn't. But like do some sort of improv vocal thing about here comes the tip jar, like you know what I mean? Like make it fun for people to give you their money. You know what I mean? Like same thing with like branding. It's like well, just have fun with it. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like having fun with it, and at the end of the day, it's like that person has control of whether they're gonna give
they want to support. That's what I mean. And when I say they want to give you money, it's like
they want to help you out. They're enjoying the situation, and
It's a reciprocal deal.
And honestly, I feel like people nowadays, especially because we're in the world that we're in, people acknowledge that people know they're not spending as much on entertainment, or they aren't spending as much as they used to. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but as far as I can tell, that they definitely aren't buying as much music as they used to. So it's like, how do you get them to still support you? I mean, that's a marketing thing.
And most people want to too. And I guess that's what I think as I get older. I'm like, man, you just gotta have fun with, like, look at things for what they are.
Yeah.
Accept it, like you were saying. Like, you can either fight things, or you can be like, well, how can I work within this system? And I think creative people, doesn't matter. Like musicians, are really good at figuring out idioms, genres, and how to work within. I was joking with someone the other day where I was like, man, sometimes I feel like bluegrass is becoming like Tinder, where it's like, I go out to a band, I'm like, here comes the whiskey song about whiskey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like reading like a girl's profile, like, I love homebrew and whiskey, singing songs about weed. It's like, okay,
You're like, all right.
But at the same time, it's like you're working within
that framework.
Within within the genre. I mean, that's what, it works. So like, why not?
Yeah.
Cater to that.
One thing that I always like, one thing that with the new music idiom, the way the new music world is, not the idiom, I think one thing that you can always do is go back and look at like, what is the function of the music. Music used to, especially bluegrass or old time, it was like dancing, or it's like sitting on your front porch and hanging out with your friends and playing music. That was that was the function of it. It's like, or telling a story, or it was kind of that's kind of what the function was of that music. Pop music was to get in your ear, and nowadays, like more popular music and stuff, it's used to sell. It's like, there's some music that you hear on TV commercials and stuff, which is, its pure reason is to sell stuff. It's like, buy,
Jingles,
buy. It's like, buy this stuff, buy.
Catering to the consumer inside all.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it's deciding what type of music you want to make, what type of function you want it to serve. Do you want to, and so taking a look at that when you're creating your music. I mean, people are going to create their music however they want. I mean, obviously they have every right to do that. But I always think it's cool when someone takes a step back and is like, I'm gonna create something that, I don't know, just kind of, it speaks to what I'm going through, or speaks to like a particular situation. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I feel pretty fortunate because I have the three things I play are pretty unique to each thing. Like, there's one girl I play with that she's a singer-songwriter primarily, and it's really cool because it gives me an outlet to, like, it's we mostly do as a duo, some guests sometimes, and she kind of picks different people at different gigs to play with, which is cool too. But for me, it's like really nice because I can be lyrical with the bow. She gives me a lot of freedom to do that.
Yeah.
But it's cool because I'm like, well, I'm like supporting her and her own tunes. It's real cool. I play, like tonight I got to play in it's kind of like an acoustic rock cover band, which is fun.
Nice, yeah.
And then playing with Amy and then the Americana thing. And that kind of, I always think about that a lot when I go back to thinking about, because for me, I'm like, well, I just love all this body of tunes that are out here. I've written tunes. I never really consider myself like a great songwriter or anything, but and it's fun. It's definitely more fun when I have people to collaborate with and make them come to life. But I always think about that too. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm so concerned about having my own individual sound, but then like I really like playing in all these cover bands and finding songs that I really like, and arranging them in a cool way. But I guess that's kind of original in its own way. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I always think about that where I'm like, wow, it's really funny because like I think about that a lot, like how to develop your own sound, be who you are, but then you're playing everyone's stuff all
the time. Yeah.
But I love all those tunes. They all mean something to me. They all make me feel a certain way or take me back. And I always think of music as like the ultimate time machine. Like I've been listening to a lot of the Stevie Wonder stuff, and like it just reminds me of like driving around my dad, going to church on Sundays.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like
exactly.
really weird listening to Casey Kasem's top 40s, and I'm like, oh, this is weird. Like.
Yeah.
But I don't know, but it's cool, and then I can try to bring that into the stuff when we play it if it's something like that we do.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, as a bass player, I think one of the your job, I feel like, and not only just the job, but the thing that brings me the greatest amount of joy at being a bass player, and fulfilling that role is whatever musical situation you're in, whatever type of feel you're trying to play, your job is to make it better. Always be striving to make it better. Never go on autopilot. Always be like, how can I play this groovier? How can I make this groove groovier? How can I make this better? You know,
how do I make it feel good?
And sometimes the best way to do that is to not think. Yeah. Is to just allow yourself to listen to what's going on and be like, and then being like, am I placing my note where it needs to be?
A channel.
Yeah. Where should this, maybe it would sound better if the beat's over here a little bit, or maybe it would sound better over here, you know, and just making micro little adjustments like that. But opening that up, but also at the same time be listening to everyone else.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a good. You know what's cool about that too, as playing with bass, is I just feel like the first thing I'm trying to do when I'm playing with new people or like a pickup gig is trying to feel where everyone's sense of time is.
Yeah.
As we were talking about earlier in the kitchen, it's not like there's not really this concept of perfect time, but there's like, you know, where do people feel time, and like. I took a lesson with Ken Walker, the jazz bass guy, like
Ken's great.
Yeah, like 4 years ago or something when I first started, and he was talking about how it was Ray Brown and Ed. How did I say his name? The drummer, Ed Thigpen. Yeah. Yeah. So he always brought the analogy up. He's like, no one really has perfect time. It's like we all just feel it differently. He's like, where Ray would push it a lot.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, you could have Ray going, he'd be pushing it here, and Ed would be here. But they'd be moved. It's like driving a car. They're both going 50 miles per hour.
Yeah.
They're still in line with each other, so it's not like this where they're racing head to head.
Yeah.
But it works because they're still moving together.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like I completely agree. Is that it's all about. I mean, all that music is relative sound over time. Mm-hmm. It's like. That's all that.
You just turn into a
division
problem.
That's all the music awesome. Is. All the music is sound over time. It's sound over a period of time, and it's like, what? So what is something that feels good? Why does something feel good?
Yeah, no,
it's consistency.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's all it is. It's consistency. It's playing one thing over and it's repetition. You know, so it's like if you can play. That's when someone has good time or a good feel. It's like they're playing this their note length is this amount. It's not like going from here to here to here to here to here to here to here. It's like it's there, and it's like bam, that's what feels good, is that right there. And then having an overall awareness of what's going on around them and what everyone else is doing, and you know, and that's what informs their note length. Like a bass note length can completely change the feel of a tune, whether it's a short note, long note, or any shade in between that, you know.
Yeah, that's what I love about playing acoustic music.
Yeah.
I don't really have a lot of experience playing with a drummer.
Playing with a drummer, it's very similar. It's similar in a lot of ways if you have a good drummer, you know. I mean, and that's like, you know, you need a sensitive drummer because drums can be a very dangerous instrument because they are so loud. They can be so loud, especially with cymbals and everything. You need someone who's very aware of that, who's very aware of and who's listening. That's like the number one thing for a musician to have is ears. Mm-hmm. Like, and what I mean by ears is that it's like, where is your volume in relation to everyone else? Where is your beat in relation to everyone else? Like, where is the amount of space that's there? Like allowing the song to breathe, not just filling it up with a bunch of notes just because you're trying to show off.
Yeah.
You know, like identifying what is important right now. Is the lyric the most important? Is the guitar the most important? Is there like a bass fill that needs to come out and then step out and come back?
Yeah.
You know, it's like and understanding the way that works, and that the person that's listening, it's serving the person that's listening.
Yeah.
And but while also at the same time serving everyone around you.
Oh yeah.
So that's what having good ears is all of those things plus 100 more things that.
Yeah, I noticed and I don't know, I stopped drinking at the same time I started playing bass, was, you know, so it was always interesting to me that like and I can never tell if it's because I was like partying while I was playing the banjo a lot, which for me was totally inhibiting.
It's like
my
the
ability
only way to play the banjo.
No,
is to party
no.
a lot. Yeah, obviously.
But I always go back and forth. I'm like, wow, I feel like I never really like when I first started playing bass, I always felt like Frodo. I'd put like the ring on, and like all of a sudden it was like,
Yeah.
you slowed down. And I'm like, wow, I've never heard music like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like usually with the banjo, I would be thinking about what I would be doing, and I was always kind of hip to playing with, trying to play with the bass player. But playing bass, it was so interesting because it was like all of a sudden I was just hearing all these, like hearing time differently and feeling, the push and the pull and all these different things that I've never felt before with the banjo. Where the banjo, I'd always think about, well, where's the beat, where's the downbeat, and how can I like play right on top of it, give it a little space and do all that. I still love sitting down with the metronome and just like trying to play differently behind it, ahead of it, right on it.
Yeah, practicing all these different roles and stuff.
Yeah, even just chucking on the upbeat was so cool.
Yeah.
But I never really when I started playing bass was the first time I just started. It was weird. I was like, man, I can feel how the guitar player, he's playing a little bit behind. The mandol guy's really starting to push it.
Yeah.
And then they're looking at you like, let's push it. And I'm like, well, no, I just want to keep it
I want to keep it here. Yeah.
But it's like, well, I also have to keep it in a certain spot where I'm supporting this guy here.
Yeah.
Because their natural time might be a little behind. And then it's like, how it goes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, a band is what a band is a collective, like,
living, breathing
it's a summation of everyone's own time, of their own natural time, like you're saying. That's what a band is.
Well, do you think too? I think that's a lot with like supporting people. Like I know there's some bass players like, this is where it's at.
Yeah, and
which is good for certain occasions.
There's an occasion to do everything. There's an occasion to go with the band. There's an occasion to hold the beat, to hold where it is, and as far as time goes. But like where the best music happens,
it's organic.
Is honestly, it's like is playing with people that are listening.
Well, I like what you said about
the answer.
Because sometimes I start thinking more and more. I'm like, well, my job is part of my role is to make this feel good and be supportive. So knowing like, okay, I know the songs well enough and certain people I play with, it's gonna go back a little bit, but it's not gonna drag and fall off.
Exactly.
So
Trusting
I'm like, well, I gotta go with that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then like it'll kind of come around again.
Yeah.
And that's okay as long I think there's a difference between like, I always think of like this, if this is like the beat is that little red light like perfectly in the middle. Sometimes it goes a little back, sometimes it goes a little ahead, sometimes it's right on top. And that's all right as long as it doesn't go like wonk or like
Well, as long as it doesn't go like wah and then stays there. And then it's oh, let's pull it back a little bit further. Oh no, did you hear what we just did? We just dropped it like so much.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So sometimes I'm like, I know on this part when the singing starts, it's gonna pull a little bit.
Or every bluegrass solo ever is gonna go like whoop, the person who's soloing just instantly. That's one thing that I've noticed as soon as I started playing bluegrass. I was like, oh, at the beginning of everyone's solo, they like push the time and then it comes back a little
bit. Especially the banjo.
It's been like I've heard on mandolin, guitar, fiddle. I've heard on everything. That's what people do is they want their solo to be exciting, so that naturally they punch it and they like go forward a little bit, but then sometimes they'll sink back. Yeah. If they're listening, what's going on?
Or if you just get excited and you're like, whew, then you're like, ooh, I'm really pushing this. I need to kind of like...
Yeah, relax. Yeah.
Well, this could be a good segue to play a tune.
Yeah, totally.
let's see, outside of anything you're currently working on or excited about, I mean, besides being dad,
yeah,
too.
but music wise,
or anything in general, do you do any other forms of art or anything?
Let me see. Like I'm playing the guitar a fair amount more. I mean, music is kind of my thing. I don't really do visual arts or anything like that.
Yeah.
I cannot really draw at all. Yeah, but I've been playing the guitar a fair amount. Just kind of like messing around with that, singing and stuff. Because I was in choir for years. I've actually probably had more schooling in choir than upright bass.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was in choir from
That's cool.
8th grade all the way through college. So, what was that? It's like 4 or 5. It's like 10 years. Yeah, because I did 5 years in college.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've been to Italy. I've sang in St. Mark's Cathedral.
Wow, that's pretty.
Yeah,
cool.
I've been all over Italy, or all over northern Italy. I've been to South Africa, singing with the University of North Florida chamber singers, and we'd sing like in Lithuanian and Latin and name it.
Wow.
So we sang a bunch, So I was always I wasn't ever like a soloist. I did a couple solos here and there, but like singing, but I was like a baritone with like a lower register. But in high school, I always thought I was a bass because I was like, oh yeah, I can sing down here. I'm a bass, right? And then my junior year of high school, I think is what it was, I went down to Stetson because I grew up in Florida, right? Panhandle of Florida. And then I went down to Stetson University, which is like in the middle. It's like northeast of Orlando. And they have an amazing choral program there. And I like met this guy who's from Russia and he was like in his mid 40s, and he worked construction for like years. And I met him and I was like, oh, this guy's a bass, because he could sing like.
Because then you heard what a bass.
I heard what a bass could sound like, and I was like, oh, that's a bass. I was like, okay, I'm a baritone with like a little bit of a lower register. Like I can sing an E flat below the bass clef, on a D on a good day.
Yeah.
Like maybe in the morning, but like I can hit an E below the bass clef consistently. But yeah, that was like an eye-opening experience.
Do you think all that stuff helps you with? I know bluegrass harmony stacking and all that's different than like choir music.
It is a little bit, but
does that help you out? Kind of hear the intervals and everything.
Honestly, the best thing that it's helped out with is vowel shape. Just understanding vowel shape, because vowel shape can make something sound out of tune even though it's in tune. If someone's singing in like an ah and you're singing an eh or something like that, or some other, because there's like so many different types of vowels, like an a, right? We think like ah.
Oh, that's cool.
Those are all different types of ahs, and you have to be matching someone else. And in that case, it's very similar to like playing in an orchestra, where it's like your bow speed and where you're playing, like how close to the bridge you're playing. That is how you color the sound. And that's like the equivalent of like vowel shapes. And yeah, you can sound out of tune if you're, like on a bass, like your bow speed also affects the intonation, not just your left hand. It's like your left hand, obviously, if you're sharp, or flat, but if you're moving faster, if you're going faster with the bow, and applying a fair amount of weight, then that'll make it sharper. If you're playing slower or like a slower bow speed, then it won't be as sharp.
That's interesting.
So it's always something to think about, is like is how bow speed or how vowel shape affects the intonation of a particular piece. And that's something that it's like, that's when you're really doing fine tuning of intonation. That's cool. That's a big part of it.
I feel like the bowing stuff, I realized too, is for such a long time. I kind of like got back into the bowing stuff again, maybe September. And then somewhere around winter break, I just was practicing a lot, and I had issues with my neck, and all this stuff got super tight. So then I saw did a couple of these Alexander lesson techniques.
Oh, sweet.
Which was good, but what I realized too was that with the bow, when I was doing the pits, it wouldn't really bother me because I was balancing the weight more.
Yeah.
And then when I realized one night I was practicing, I was like, wow, this whole thing is like it's just tight the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's like it's always in a state the muscles are being engaged. And then recently, like this is actually like 2 nights ago, I finally started to get this this was, I was gripping the bow and keeping my thumb like really in there. But I'm like, man, I'm trying to work more and more, feeling how to get the right pressure, but keeping this loose. And I feel like the wrist is starting to get loosened up now. Like it's more like, which is cool and kind of cool.
Dude, it's whenever you first start playing with a bow, like French or German grip or however, the tendency is to be like, I need to make this thing make sound. So you grip and then you push down on the thing, and that like it makes a sound, right? So you're like, oh cool, this is how you do it. But the more and more you play, the more you realize how little you have to do.
Yeah, which is cool because and I'm hoping that we were talking about trying to get the swing feel more. I'm hoping that like the looser I can get my hand and figure out the right amount of pressure.
Yeah.
The more I won't feel like I'm wrestling around with the thing. Because sometimes I feel like it's like I'm just like, man, I'm just like trying to figure out how to balance the weight. Got this thing going on down here. Yeah. Probably what I'm trying to do is compensate to balance by tightening up this arm now. So it's like, how do I keep this all loose? And
that's another thing. Like that's something that I'm constantly working on, as well as like the balance of not putting too much pressure. Because another thing, there is the right amount of weight to allow it to go into the string with both hands, depending upon the register of the bass. That changes drastically depending upon the string, because the bass has such a large range, right? And the string diameters, the string widths, and that are just so much more extreme than any other string instrument, right? So we have to drastically change the amount of weight depending upon the E string, A string, D string, G string. Like all of them completely change. Where it's like cello, you have to change it a bit. Violin, it's like, yeah, you have to change it, but it's almost identical.
Yeah.
Because all the strings are so like close in the diameter. But with the bass, it's like it's so different. And then like the string length, you go from like this like 42-inch string length or whatever to like something that's like this if you're playing when you're way up in the thumb position. And like a string that's this long in a G string, that's like so much less weight, and if you put too much weight on something, it stifles the sound. Even a little bit too much weight, it'll choke it with the left hand or the right hand. So it's all about like feeling the string and like honestly getting in tune with because the string will tell you what it wants to do. The string will be like, oh, it's not sounding as resilient as it could. And as you train your ear to hear that, just by being aware, then you can start lightening up to the point where it's like, okay, this is where I'm not getting any buzzing, but I'm still applying just enough weight with my left hand and just enough weight with my right hand where it's like the string it blossoms.
Comes alive,
yeah, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, then you just get this whole other really sweet sound out of the instrument.
And then you get the vibes where you're like, this feels right.
This feels right, exactly. Yeah, like Edgar talked about that, and like in the liner notes of his unaccompanied Bach suite, he was saying that he used to practice the thing so slow, like 16th note equals 60 beats per minute. Wow. So it's like ooh 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 ooh,
wow.
Ooh, like that, or even slower, than that. And that's how you practice those pieces, like especially up in the thumb position. And it's like Edgar's probably the most patient human being on the planet for doing that type of stuff. And same thing with and Paul and Ethan and a bunch of other guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, like what you're doing is he was saying in those liner notes that there was a moment where he was like, oh, this is it, because you can feel it. You'll be doing some crazy stuff up on top, but you won't have any pain. I remember when I first started, I actually started on French bow, and then I got a German teacher about 6 months in, and he was like, you need to play German. So I've played German ever since. But when I was playing French bow, there was a point where like the first like month or two I was gripping really difficult, and I'd be done practicing, after a couple hours, and I'd just be like just wrecked, right? And I'd be like, this has got to be wrong, And then I talked to Melanie Punter, who is the bass teacher at FSU. She was coming through town in the Panhandle playing in the local symphony because they needed to hire some real bass players because they were playing like some Strauss piece like Don Juan or like Death and Transfiguration or something like that. Some crazy bass part. And so her and her PhD student at the time, Sergio Serb, who was who eventually became my teacher. They came through town, and I remember she just sat up there and she played French, and she just put the bow on the string and just pulled.
Yeah.
And it was like the biggest, like most warm sound. I still I can hear that sound. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like how do you get that? How do you get that sound? And I went up to her afterwards because it was a rehearsal that one of my teachers let me sit in on. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how do you get that sound? She's like, honestly, just complete relaxation. And she's like, that's the gist of it. There's a lot of things that go into it, but that's the gist of it, is just being as completely relaxed as possible. And I was like, oh, that's how you do it. And then, I went home and I started, and then for the next 4 months or 5 months, I just practiced on getting as relaxed as possible. And then eventually her student, Sergio, he graduated, and then he eventually started teaching at University of West Florida in Pensacola, which was FSU and Tallahassee and UWF were where I lived was halfway in between those places, and there was a community college there that I was attending, and and he would stop, drive an hour and a half and then drive another hour, and he would stop and give me a 2-hour lesson. We did that every week for 6-7 months.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's where the majority of my technique on the bass comes from.
The bowing stuff, what I was thinking, and this is just thoughts, I don't know if they're real or not true, so the looser you get your arm to be, that's when you start tapping into that weight, using your arm as a weight.
Exactly.
Because you're not tensing muscles to pull.
Exactly.
So that's what I noticed too. That's why I was like, wow, this feels really cool. And
Yeah.
that's what made me think I was starting to get it a little bit more, because now all of a sudden,
yeah,
I felt there was more ease, and it wasn't I was gripping. It was it was down. I could feel the arm weight more,
yeah,
kind of
the arm weight, and then
Yeah,
eventually
yeah.
you can just start feeling the whole shoulder. You can start feeling from back here, from from your shoulder blades all the way down. You can start feeling just the arm falling on the string, and not only the arm weight, the complete arm weight that you're using to pull the sound, but also the weight of the bow. The weight of the bow will do so much for you. Yeah. And a lot of these, extended classical bow techniques, it's completely reliant on your ability to manipulate that. So spiccato or something like that. I haven't worked on spiccato in years, but
I don't even know what spiccato
is. So in there's actually a really great book that's all violinists use this book. It's called the Galamian Method. It's Ivan Galamian was the name of this really famous teacher. He actually taught at Curtis and Juilliard. I think he helped found Curtis, actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and that's where Ethan went and Paul went, and that's where Edgar Meyer teaches in Philadelphia. But this guy, I think in the 40s maybe, he wrote this method book. And, these strokes existed before then, the different types of bow strokes, but there were all these different types. So spiccato is used for really fast passages to get clarity between the notes. I think Mozart 35, remember, I really wasn't too much of an orchestral student, but I know a little bit about it. But Mozart 35, I think is a very popular passage to use that. I say don't quote me, but we're recording everything on, so I guess you don't have to quote me. I can just be wrong in my own way.
I can be wrong. Okay. We're not going for perfection.
Exactly.
We're just having fun.
But anyways, there are lots of passages where you need to use that type of stroke. Otherwise, because then that's how you engage the string to do a certain
Would you want to play a tune for people?
Yeah, totally.
Maybe play a I don't know, any sort of boat thing.
Yeah. I have. I actually worked up. I was working up on the High Road by Tim O'Brien. It's this really cool tune. I won't play any classical stuff for you guys because I'm not that guy.
Yeah, no, that's totally cool. I don't think you have to.
Yeah.
I think what's really cool about that's what's great. Going back to let's just wrap this part up and we'll do the music. But I think what's really cool. We were talking about this, and this is what I wonder a lot too, with finding your own musical voice. If you listen to Paul Cowart, it's him.
Yeah.
You listen to Ethan, it's Ethan.
Yeah.
You're not is that him, or they both have very distinct voices. And that Shasta thing was really cool when I got when you were just hanging out at this campground. Yeah. And the two of them just are there playing together, and you can really hear how unique. But then I wonder, I'm like, well, yeah, as I'm talking about developing a sound, I'm like, that takes, does it take years, or is it just a matter of relaxing a little bit and being like when you got here first, you were playing along with Misty.
Yeah.
My first natural reaction was like, with no conscious thought, was just like, oh my God, Bradley's so good. He's like, he's nailing all this stuff.
No.
Well, no, I'm getting sorry. So then I was like, yeah, but dude, just relax. Like, it's cool you can do that. Like,
yeah.
You
well,
know,
it's relaxing. It's
too,
not just, and this is something that I'm still learning as well, and everyone can get better at it, is that the relaxing part about music, it goes for your physical posture, like how you're playing the instrument, but it also goes for your ear. Like, and that's something that I've learned in the past couple of years, really, is just like when you're playing it, like jazz, where it's like this high information harmonic music, right? Yeah, where it's like, it's like constantly changing chords. You're changing keys. It's like, is that a 2-5 to 4? Is that a 2-5 to flat 7? What is it? It's learning to just be like, it's like turn off your brain, and I mean, yes, you need to know that stuff, but it's like allowing your ear to just actually absorb it. So
what's happening to me lately is I've been learning a lot of blues stuff, like not like B.B. King blues, but like jazz blueses, you know. And what's been happening more and more, we talk about we'll play Blue Monk later, is like, I keep hearing in my head it going to the I call it the first turnout is like 3-6-2-5-1, then there's 1-6-2-5-1.
Yeah.
So like in my head now, I keep hearing it going to the 3, but I don't do it. Yeah. And it keeps frustrating. Or I can hear like, you can throw the 2-5 in before the 4, I think it is. Or something. So like, I mean, on one hand, I'm like, wow, it's really cool. I'm starting to hear that stuff. But then I need to like slow down and like actually work it out.
Work it into your playing.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Singing what you're playing and have your instrument be a representation of your voice is huge.
Like Slam Stewart.
Yeah, like Slam Stewart.
Stewart.
Not necessarily singing it. You don't have to sing everything, but you should be able to. And someone else who's brilliant at that, who's actually brilliant at singing what you're playing, is Oteil Burbridge.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he is amazing. He is so good at that. He's like sits there and plays, and like, that's why his soloing sounds so lyrical, is because he can sing it. He can sing what he's playing. And that's what all that anyone ever really wants to hear, is a good sung phrase.
Yeah, that's true.
That's like one of my voice, I took voice lessons for a very short period of time, and piano lessons from this lady. Her name is Lois Henry, and she was like one of the greatest musicians I've ever met. Still is. She's still in North Florida playing. She's so brilliant. I know so much because of her. Anything I know is or a lot of what I know is because of her. But she's the first person who ever told me about the idea of phrasing. Yeah. And phrasing has a lot of different meanings depending upon if you talk to a jazz musician or classical musician or anywhere in between, or bluegrass musician. Every style of music has their own. Mm-hmm. But classical music has a very codified definition of what a phrase is. In fact, if you take form and analysis classes in some institution, they'll actually go through and they'll be like, oh, this is like an antecedent and a consequent phrase. You'll sing something and then there's like a call and response. Yeah, exactly. That's that idea, except it's very measured, and especially in a classical sense. And I mean classical like Mozart, not Beethoven, but like Mozart kind of type of classical, or Haydn type classical, where it's like everything is like 2-bar phrases, 4-bar phrases, and the ear just naturally hears that. Mm-hmm. So it's like getting a grip on that and being like, okay, this is a 2-bar phrase, even when you're improvising over jazz music, like jazz, where it's a kind of a free for all. It's like, yeah, things are a free for all, but if you want someone to really resonate with it, if you adhere to closer to these rules, then people will know what you're playing. That's why Oscar Peterson sounds so great, mm-hmm. is because he phrases. He phrases so incredibly well. He'll play an idea. He'll actually think of an idea, be like, I don't know, just a specific melodic phrase we could put him on, and I could point to it, where it's like it lasts 2 measures. It's not a run-on sentence. He says something, and then he'll say something else to complement that, and then he'll move on to a new idea.
He's the master
developing that. He's so good at that, and Ray is really good at it too. Everyone in that band, man. It's like that's why they were so liked. It's like, yeah, they had chops for days, but how many people have chops? There are a lot of people who develop chops, but not enough people who develop phrasing chops.
Yeah, or synergy. I mean, those guys, I think.
Yeah,
the,
like
the ultimate musical
rhythmic
ESP.
synergy. Yeah, there's the music ESP. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Harmonically and rhythmically.
That, you know, it made me think. I didn't think about it enough here how to do it with the Bluetooth speaker, like how because there's stuff. I know you and I have a shared love for all this stuff. I'm like, man, it'd be cool to just have it. We can
to
just
play it and be like that. That's what
we're talking about.
Like this little part
yeah.
and then this part, and then it's like they work together.
Yeah, it's so cool. Well, what do you say we take time? You want to play a fiddle tune or something?
Yeah, I'll play.
2, go 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
Nice, man.
All right.
Sweet. I think that's fine.